And once again, welcome to the new Power to Fly Chat and Learn. Again, I'm Michelle Montgomery, and I'll be moderating today's conversation with Light and Wonder's Connie James and Siobhan Lane, thriving as a woman in leadership while achieving wholeness. Now, before we get started, please allow me to go through some really simple housekeeping rules so we can make sure that everyone is safe and comfortable in this space today. So first of all, we encourage you to participate. Turn on your cameras, let me see your faces, let us all see your faces, drop your name and tell us where you're coming in from. We're always eager to see where our community is located. So that is so great. And I see we have people from all over Belgrade, Serbia. That's so awesome. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Just for your knowledge, this conversation is being recorded. So in 2 to 4 business days after the chat, you'll receive a rewatch email with a link to the recording. Go ahead and note that if you're on camera, you might show up on a live recording. This may be your debut. So go ahead and show us your faces, let us see you. But just note that you will be recorded if you do so. And lastly, feel free to share any questions you may have in the chat box. And if you'd like to remain anonymous, you can always DM me and I'll ask the question on your behalf. Okay, so as I mentioned, today we have 2 very, very special guests from Light and Wonder, and it's a Power to Fly partner. Light and Wonder develops dynamic game content, cutting edge systems, and unrivaled services for casinos, social gaming, and online gaming. They are committed to serving as a good corporate steward and are purpose-driven in their actions while operating in the best interest of their employees, partners, and communities. So make sure when you get a chance, visit their company page at Power to Fly, and you can learn more about their over 250 open roles. Okay, I might be coming to learn more about your 250 open roles and share a little bit of that information with my network as well. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Connie James and Siobhan Lane. Now, Connie is a seasoned financial executive with 20 years of gaming experience in financial and operational roles and a track record of delivering successful business, cultural, and financial transformations. Ms. James joined Light and Wonder in January of 2020 and served as the Chief Financial Officer of the company's gaming business unit, where she led the business unit through unprecedented disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2021, she took over as Light and Wonder's EVP and Group CFO, you go, Connie, overseeing Light and Wonder's global financial strategy with a focus on capital allocation to maximize shareholder value. She also oversees the finance, accounting, investor relations, tax, treasury, facilities, and IT and procurement functions of the company. Connie, wow, that's so great to have you with us. We appreciate you being here. We also have with us today Siobhan Lane. She's a senior global gaming executive with a track record of driving business results through strong strategic and executional alignment with a focus on building high-performing teams and an engaging culture. Ms. Lane currently serves as Executive Vice President and Chief Executive Officer of Gaming at Light and Wonder, where she oversees all aspects of the company's land-based gaming business, demonstrating an innate desire to bring teams together to do their best work. I love that. Before being named CEO of Gaming, she served as Light and Wonder Senior Vice President and Chief Commercial Officer and led the North American region of the gaming business. Siobhan, it's great to have you with us as well. So I am excited to get this chat going today. And everyone who's with us, I see we have, people joining in, continue to join in, continue to drop where you're joining us from, but you all have submitted some great questions in advance. And so we want to jump right in and kind of go back and forth. And Connie, Siobhan, just, we'll play off of each other and have a great discussion and conversation. So I'm so excited to learn more about you all, as I'm sure everyone else is. So we'll start with you, Connie. If you could tell us, what were the main challenges you faced when you made your first steps into leadership? And Connie, I'm going to tell you you're on mute. We want to hear you. So I think you got to.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Hey,
there we go.
There we go.
We got you now.
Absolutely.
Pleasure to be with you all today. I'm thrilled to kind of spend some time talking about these really important topics. The main challenges, it is interesting, this transition that you go through in your career from kind of being more of a technical expert than to thinking about how do you drive results through others. And, as I reflect on that journey, I think the key opportunity as I continued to progress was really to harness this adaptive leadership style. There's no doubt about it that everybody is motivated by different types of engagements and styles. And I think having the ability to understand what lifts people up, and importantly, what shuts people down, and then thinking about how do you really interact with them is incredibly important. So that's one thing I'd share with folks.
Oh, I love that. How to lift people up and what to, oh, come on. Oh, I see where we're going today. This is going to be good. This is going to be good. Siobhan, you want to jump in there? The question, some of the challenges you faced when you made your first steps into leadership.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with this thread that Connie started us on. I think, every time you move up through an organization or even laterally through an organization, having a clear understanding of what's expected of you. And as you move from that individual contributor to people manager and then ultimately leadership role, you do have to develop different muscles. And I think leadership style is one that you have to have a level of awareness around specifically. What is your default style or handful of styles that you generally go to? And, as a senior leader, you really have to tap into several different styles to show up as the leader you need to show up in certain situations or with certain teams or certain individuals. And just having a good understanding of those different styles and how they can help you in different situations is really helpful. But no matter what role you're stepping into and as you evolve in your career, really having a clear understanding of what's expected of you, how do I need to show up, and then having your little toolbox to be able to tap into, during those tough days or the good days, and that's why, continuously developing yourself and having an awareness around your opportunities and how you can grow and learn as a leader is even more important. Like, you are responsible for lots of people at that point. So the onus is on you to continue to develop and grow so you can show up as your best self to that team that you're managing.
Oh, I love the first off. Okay, you all buckle up because this is going to be, and I'm going to tell you, they are hitting on some language here. If you all don't understand what she said you can't show up as the same person every single time. There's leadership styles, right? And so I love that. And I love that you all have both recognized that you have to harness that leadership style. You have to go ahead and continue building it and growing because you're showing up for everyone and everyone needs something different. I absolutely love that. One of the questions that came to us was, how have you built confidence and resilience over the course of your careers? And those are two of my favorite words, confidence and resilience. And so, Siobhan, I'll throw that your way. How have you built confidence and resilience over the course of your career?
Yeah, I think different people can build confidence differently. For me, I build confidence by really, again, as I start on kind of individual contributor level, I really got to know my stuff. Like, there wasn't a meeting that I would show up in where I didn't know and I wasn't, the expert on a topic that I was expected to present on. So that's what builds my confidence, is making sure I have the knowledge base to start from, and I can drive value in that conversation around the table. And then as you grow in your career, just making sure you're expanding your horizons and levels of experience so you can continue to build on that knowledge base. And I do that each and every day. I have to oversee lots of different aspects of the business, but the more I can educate myself and gain knowledge around what I need to be managing, helps me build confidence. It also helps me ask the right questions, which is really important as a leader. Right, to be able to inspect what's going on in the business. So making sure I'm knowledgeable, I have context, really has always helped me, show up in a confident way to whatever conversation I might have to be a part of.
I appreciate that. And with showing up in expertise, showing up with all the knowledge, that can cause some stress. That can cause a lot. So, Connie, you want to take the part on the resilience piece of that? How have you developed and built your resilience? Based on what Siobhan tells us, we got to show up, and we got to show up ready to run.
I love that. And there's so much to pull from that. I'm a big believer that resilience is probably one of the top 3 attributes that allow people to continue to succeed in their career. My team knows I use this phrase all the time: we win and we learn. And I love it because it's twofold. First and foremost, I think people really show up with the intent to do the best they can every single day. And having that winning mindset is so important. We also know there's going to be times when we make mistakes or something doesn't go as planned. And I see that as a real learning opportunity. I like to steer away from the word failure. I think every time there is something that, again, doesn't come out the way in which you anticipated it to, it is this true opportunity to think about how you can learn from it. And I think it's so also important because oftentimes what we find in the day-to-day is we get busy and you're meeting after meeting and you're just trying to get through the list that is. Absolutely. And as a leader, I think one of the most important things that we can do is really reflect and take the time to say, well, how did that work? And why did it work? To Siobhan's point, asking the right questions, but making sure that we're getting the desired outcomes. And the only way you really are able to really think through these things is if you carve out time on a weekly basis to reflect upon what was and the why behind it. So we win and we learn. And I think that mindset really does allow people to be much more resilient than they perhaps ever thought they could be.
Come on, hashtag we win and we learn. I put that one down for us, Connie, because that is good. I like that one. And I love what you said. I think ultimately people don't show up. Who shows up to work and says, today I'm going to tear the whole thing down? I mean, it's just not what happens, right? People show up ultimately thinking I'm going to go to work and do my job. Now we have to continue to cultivate that within people, right? And that takes that leadership. But I love that. I love. Okay, we're going to drop some hashtags today. So love. Okay. So I love the next question that kind of came in, kind of plays off the one before. It's talking about confidence and resilience. But someone asked, is there room for introverted personalities in leadership? So I'm going to throw that your way, Connie, and then we'll kind of talk about it a little bit too, Siobhan. I think that's kind of cool.
It is. It's and in my world, it really kind of is at the core. A lot of finance and accounting folks by nature are introverted. We do a lot of really deep thinking, many times in a very quiet place in order to drive expected results. I've had some really amazing people work with me over the years, some who were incredibly introverted. And it was interesting also how they grew up in a way in different cultures. I've been blessed to have lived in a very global dynamic workforce environment. And she once told me, again, a brilliant mind, and I said, I don't hear enough from you. Walk me through this. And she said, well, when I was growing up, I was told that children should be seen, not heard. And it really dawned on me that there's also so many cultural norms that I think drive introversion that we don't also necessarily understand. And so what I had to do was, one, acknowledge it, and two, say, well, how can I make sure we create the space? And again, a brilliant mind, yet we never got enough out of her vocally. And so I said, I know it's kind of nerve-wracking coming into a meeting. And the tip I gave her was write down the few things that you're taking through the meeting and then find the space. And I'm actually going to call on you to say, KJ, what are the few insights that you've had from the conversation? And as a leader, I think it's so important to make sure that you're finding the space. Kind of diving into a little bit of the conversation that we had earlier, as leaders, when you're younger in your career, you're kind of always proving yourself, and you have oftentimes, for the extroverted people, want to get the first word in. As you can become more and more senior, your job is to create the space, again, for all the brilliance to rise and make sure you're taking more of a backseat and maybe concluding the meeting with what you heard and next steps, but again, allowing the space for those that need to get their opinions on the table. So my simple advice here is, as leaders, find the space for the introverted folks. For those that are introverted, find your moments to shine and be prepared. Write it down. It takes the nervousness out of it. And then when there is that opportunity in that lane, seize the moment. Because if you don't tell us, we'll never know. So there's this dual obligation, I think, that's required.
Yeah, seize the moment. Come on. I got a hashtag. Okay, seize the moment. I love that. And what I really like, though, is kind of you didn't use the word, but ultimately you showed up as an ally for someone in that moment. Yeah. You really did. You really, really did. And so I just love that. Siobhan, anything you want to add on showing up as an introverted
Yeah,
person?
this is a fascinating topic. And I think it can very much, Siobhan, as you said, relate to diversity, right? And some of the
Absolutely.
onlys in the room and sitting around the table too. And I'm very mindful of that as a senior leader. How do I create space and room for someone who might not be battling an introvert-extrovert dynamic, but might be battling a different dynamic in the room that others might not be so well aware of. So I would consider myself an introvert. So I'm well experienced on this topic. And the way I define it, or what I've researched that has helped me define it, is extroverts get their energy from other people. Introverts get their energy from being by themselves. And so while I have to show up in an extroverted way in some aspects of my job, sometimes I need to go and be by myself to recharge, if you will, just to be able to, again, show up as that different person depending on the situation. And I read a really great book a couple of years ago called Quiet, and it's all about kind of the Western society has defined leadership for us in this extroversion sense. And Connie was touching on social norms. And you don't think of like an introvert in a traditional sense of being that kind of Western norm extroverted leader. But there are so many really high impact introverted leaders out there. So encourage you to read this book, Quiet, and the power of introverts that can have. And I think Connie touched on it a little bit. You know, your job as a senior leader is to make space for everyone around the table and to encourage them to share their perspectives. And so whether you're introvert or extrovert, I tell my leaders, that's your job. That is why you are sitting around the table. I want you to have a voice, and you have a responsibility to the team that you lead to use that voice. And so one trick that our CHRO, Roxanne, actually gave me as of late to help some of the introverts on my team is think about, we use poker chips because we're in gaming. Think about you have $100, $50, and $25 poker chip in front of you. And in that hour-long meeting, you have 3 poker chips. And so your goal is to speak up 3 times. Are you going to play your $100 chip, or your $25 chip might be just like commenting or reacting to something somebody said. Your $100 chip might be like really putting an idea out on the table, or a solution to a problem. But if you think about it in that sense, you kind of keep track of how much you've vocalized or participated in the meeting. And then the weight of the words that you might be saying also relative to the value of your poker chips. So just a little trick that some of our introverts could use in a meeting to really kind of measure, have I been participating? Have I been vocalizing? I think Connie's comment about being prepared, and then don't discount your ideas or your thoughts. Again, you have a responsibility to be present and vocalize in that meeting. So don't discount yourself before you've even started. You're there for a reason.
First off, I'm coming to a meeting with you all just to play the poker chip participation. Because sounds like that's a load of fun. I really, really like that, Siobhan. I mean, if you all didn't get that, that is a phenomenal idea to really help bring people out, and maybe even assign something to the poker chips. Like if you use $100 one, you may get, I don't know, a gift card for 10 bucks, something, I don't know. But like, what a cool way to get people to speak up. I know I would if I felt, uncomfortable in scenario. That is phenomenal. Very well done. You might want to write that one, Siobhan. I don't know. You want to write that one and sell it. And then thanks, Sheena. She put it in the chat for us that the book Quiet that you were talking about is by Susan Cain. So maybe something for people to go out there and grab. Wow, that was really, really great. I absolutely love it. It leads me to a question. We're kind of talking about leadership styles. How about both of you share with us what is your leadership style? Like if you were to framework it and give it a name or something like that, how would you describe your leadership style? And Siobhan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so there's several known leadership styles out there. There's several different models. So if you don't know yours, or we often tap into several different ones, make sure you Google it and understand, just so you get some definition around it. I would say I'm a mix of democratic and servant and sometimes transformational. But sometimes I need to pull out my, authoritarian style at times. So again, it's a great it's a great toolbox to educate yourself on, are the different styles where you have to kind of flex those different muscles at different times, like we were talking about. But I tend to be a very collaborative person. Like I was talking about, it's important to me to get conversation and collaboration going around the leadership table to make sure we're hearing everyone's thoughts and ideas and really driving that cross-functionally across the business. And also making sure that we're, in tune with the needs of our different stakeholders, like customers or employees or whoever we might be in service to. So that's kind of my servant style that comes out. But I'm a change agent at heart. So transformationally, I'm always looking to improve. How can we be better? And I do have to pace myself on that because sometimes change can be exhausting. And we have experienced that firsthand over the last few years off the back of the pandemic. Not only were we navigating through a pandemic, but we're also driving a transformation program end to end at Light and Wonder. So I'm very much a change agent and always, pushing for how can we be better, more efficient, do things differently. But I sometimes have to check myself because we don't want a lot of fatigue to set in, but I'm always striving for that transformational aspect of my role too.
Absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing. Connie, I'll throw it over to you, leadership style.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to pinpoint. I think Siobhan said, in the beginning that there's so many different types of leadership styles that in a day I find that I use. I do think, though, naturally, people kind of have a default, which we've kind of discussed a little bit. I think similar to Siobhan, my first and foremost is I'm a transformational leader. My whole career has kind of been in that regard, which is, I like to say, I'm a builder. I like to take things from a white sheet of paper, reimagine, and then see it come together. By nature, I'm a very results-driven leader. I think part of being in finance your entire career is we have deadlines that don't shift. And so we've got to make sure that we deliver things on quality, accurately, with a level of perfection, depending on the risk profile, time and time again. And I think that's also just a little bit of the role of a CFO, which is we have to make sure that we're setting pace to deliver on expectations in many ways. And with that, though, I realize that I move very quickly, similar to Siobhan. I perhaps move too quickly sometimes in this pace setting default. I've been told sometimes that I already can see where we're headed so clearly, but I've got to make sure that I give people the bricks on the yellow brick road to get to where we need to be. And lastly, I'd say I really see myself as this integrator, this great connector. I have over the years, I think, harnessed this skill set that really understands all of the various attributes that need to make sure a business is humming well, whether that's how do we think about it from a high performance culture? How do we think about it from driving business results to how do we think about it from entering into new markets and then put a regulatory wrapper around it? How does it all need to come together? And part of the beauty about, I think, that leadership style is really allowing everybody to have this voice that we can get the diversity of thought and kind of solve problems in the best way. So a lot in there. I'm such a believer, though, that we all have to find what is our default leadership style. And to Siobhan's point, you can read 15 different books and they can give you 15 different acronyms to describe it. That being said, the most important piece is name it, know it, and then when you need it, use it.
Oh, now name it, know it, when you need.
Connie's winning on the hashtag.
Wow, I just dropped that one in there, y'all. Wow, I absolutely love, and so this is so great. And just, for us to understand, right, there are so many leadership styles. Yeah. My goodness. What I'm loving about both of your answers, and I know everyone on the line is too, is you're not boxed into one.
Yeah.
I think, there used to be this mindset is either you're this or you're that or you're this. Yeah. We now know, it's 2023, you are a myriad of things, you are all kinds of stuff. And tapping into that style at the appropriate time, what's good for now, what's good for this, what's good for this group is the way to go. But definitely, as Siobhan told us, right, do the research, go take the assessments, do the thing, figure out who you are. I want to give a question to us and throw this one out there that it seems personal. This one came from someone. They really are asking. So let's dig in here. And the person said, I recently moved into a leadership role and I'm struggling to find my own leadership style. I tend to imitate my male counterparts. And they said, is it possible to lead in an impactful way while being true to our authentic selves? And then how did you build your identified leadership style? So I like, we know you kind of figured out, I got multiple things happening, but how did you learn, or where did you figure out how to build that thing? And how can we help this individual? Connie, I'll start with you.
I love this. I think we always have to be authentic to ourselves. And that's where it kind of comes back down to, we do have a default style we have to understand. I think that, Siobhan mentioned it earlier in her comments, part of you becoming a leader is really part of getting to know who you are and what motivates you and how do you show up. And I'd say you can do some reflection yourself, but oftentimes the most powerful people are those that work with you. We talk about this often, that feedback is a gift. And I'd encourage people as they're trying to figure out what it is in terms of their style that works well, seek feedback. And I think for this individual, going through that process is really important. I can tell you, I work with some male colleagues whose personalities are different ends of the spectrum. And I think that for me, over the years, what I've been able to do is observe, because I think it's so powerful. I think it's one of the most powerful things early in your career is just to observe, be a sponge, learn what you like, learn what you don't like, but find that opportunity again to define your own brand. I do think that, and again, not to be stereotypical here, but I will be for a moment, that oftentimes, some of our male counterparts can be very direct. They can be, own the room with a tone, and so can we as women. I can tell you that. And so again, take what you like, take what you don't like, find the time to really reflect on your own about what shapes you, seek feedback, and then swirl that all up and start to define it. When you're young in your career, experiment. Because you have the ability, dare I say it, to learn a lot more. We win and we learn. As you get more senior, the consequences sometimes of those learning opportunities become more profound. And so experiment, go into a meeting, say, here's how I want to show up. And let me see how, what were the, Roxanne, who's our Chief People Capability Officer, she's amazing. She said, go into a meeting and think about, how do you want people to feel? How do you want them to think about what's being said? And then do you want them to do something? Do you want them to remember something? And I think by kind of also shaping that within each meeting, and then experiment with how you show up and the style you choose, and learn from it over time would be my counsel.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like the experimentation while you're young, right? I think a lot of us, we want to play it safe the whole way through, but at some point you've got to step out there and kind of say, okay, let's figure out who I am. And that may come with some things that, unfortunately, a word we call failure that a lot of people are afraid of, but the reality is it's a learning tool. So you fail, then you learn, and then you move forward. So I absolutely love that. Siobhan, any thoughts there on the question from this individual?
Yeah, I think Connie has made so many good points. First and foremost, don't show up as your inauthentic self. It's not sustainable. And so making sure you're at a place of work that is building inclusive environments so you feel you have the safe space to show up as your authentic self is really important. That might not always be the case. So surrounding yourself with a support system, whether inside work or outside of work, to make sure that you're getting the energy and the support that you need so you can be your authentic self. It's tough, right? I've worked in those male dominated environments where I was the only woman, sometimes am still the only woman around the table. And it gets easier, I think, as you rise up through leadership. But make sure you have the support system you need. It's just not a sustainable situation where you're trying to be someone you're not, nor are you going to show up as your best self in those situations either. We are a culture of feedback, like Connie touched on, and we have leaders that are constantly learning and growing and developing themselves. And so we believe feedback is a two-way street. We get it from leaders, our two leaders all the time, and we give it to our team members all the time. And it's really well intentioned. It's to help all of us continue to grow and develop, because we're all on a learning track, no matter where we are in our careers. That should never end, in our opinion. So really cultivating this feedback of culture so you can, continue in that development track. But like Connie said, it's a lot easier and lower stakes if you take those risks early in your career and you explore. I know, culturally, we might be so focused on promotional moves up the ladder, but take a lateral role sometimes. Learning across the organization can be just as valuable, if not more valuable, because it's sometimes the non-traditional track, than learning, being an expertise in your vertical. So making sure you're taking those chances and getting those well-rounded experiences early in your career, because it just gets tougher as you go up the ladder to do those cutover lateral moves and really, well-round your experiences. So feedback, experience, seek out that feedback and make sure that you're developing the self-awareness that can make you just an even better leader or contributor within the organization. Again, this idea of self-awareness, especially when you're a senior leader, is so important. Not only for you to show up as your best leader, but again, how you're showing up to the hundreds, thousands of people that you're managing is so important. So developing that all throughout your career is just critical.
I love that. And Siobhan, it's not sustainable to be someone you are not. That's the hashtag. You got that one. Because the reality, it's not. You can't show up fake every day. Eventually it'll wear you out. And so I love this idea that both of you are presenting here, give it a shot, play with it, but find what works for you. Right? Find what works for you. I absolutely love it. I want to switch gears just a little bit for us into hiring. We got a couple of questions about some soft skills. So the question is, what are the key soft skills that will help professionals advance in their careers? And it's kind of two-part, because they also asked, is there any advice on how to showcase them throughout the interview process when you still hold an individual contributor role? So Connie, we'll start with you. Soft skills that help professionals advance, and then how do you showcase them in the interview process? And then Siobhan, I want to come to you as well.
Yeah, I love this. I think soft skills become more and more and more important as you rise in your leadership career. In fact, at some point, they almost probably outweigh some of the technical skills that you started earlier in your journey. I could name a million, but a couple that really kind of stick out to me is seek to understand and assume good intent. I do think that most of business problems actually stem from miscommunication. Siobhan mentioned it earlier. I know that when I get busy, I can just be very directive. Hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And if I could have just taken 10 seconds to provide a little bit of context, which is, here's where we are, this is what we're trying to solve for, we need to do A, B, and C. It solves a couple things. Number one, it helps them understand, okay, what is it that we're trying to achieve? And then two, they feel like they're part of the solution that's being created. And so lead with context. The double click into this is think about how then you communicate. So when you're seeking to understand, use words with a softer tone, and especially when you're in situations where you think that there's kind of high tension in the room. So a great example is if you start with it, I don't understand why we're doing this, or can you tell me why? Instead of, if you say, hey, I'm a little curious about what's happening here, and can you just run me through kind of the process that you got to with this conclusion? You get two different outcomes. And I think language, which is in some ways I worry can become a lost art, is so important. So use words like, I'm curious. Can you help me understand? I'm wondering what really inputs you consider to form that conclusion. And I think it's really powerful as you kind of think through just the ability to get the best out of people as you continue to engage.
Really like that. I really like that. It's almost like reframing your language, right?
Yeah.
Up here and presenting it out differently in the space. Siobhan, I want to give that one over to you too. What are the key soft skills that will help professionals advance in their careers?
Yeah, so many, to Connie's point. I do believe they completely outweigh technical skills as you advance in your career. Just some, influencing across and up and down the organization, motivating people, relationship building is a critical one. As you rise up, you have a lot of various stakeholders that you are, responsible to or are managing through. So making sure you're building out the right relationships across the organization, outside the organization, is really critically important. But I think this theme that Connie touched on, it goes back to, again, leveraging different styles. And if you think about, put yourself in other people's shoes and how are they motivated or how might they be feeling in this moment? And that really helps give you the context you need to show up maybe differently in that moment or with the words that you choose to use. And that's the key as a leader, right? You want to optimize the resources of the organization. That's one of your key responsibilities. And so if you're not doing that because you are saying things the wrong way, or you're not creating a safe space where risks can be flagged, or you're, just leaning on one dominant style and not thinking about, well, what motivates my team? How do I need to show up to them? It's so critical. And so having like a high EQ or a good EQ to be able to use your intuition and tap into these things is really important. And I think, again, stereotypes, but I think this is where females can add a totally different dynamic sometimes versus our male counterparts, not in every case, but certainly in some cases. So this is where our differences can really, drive a inclusive team dynamic. So, there are lots of soft skills, but making sure that, we're thinking about how we're showing up to the people that we're there to lead is really, really important.
I'm loving the responses to this question. Siobhan, I love that you brought up emotional intelligence, right? Because ultimately, I believe, this is just me, Sean's thoughts, emotional intelligence, you're going to get me anything. You can be as smart as you want to be, but if you are not emotionally intelligent, I don't want you hanging around and you can't recognize what's going on. You're not self-aware. That's hard. That's really, really hard to show up in that space. So I really appreciate you bringing that into the conversation, right? Because a lot of people will stick on that technical side, but we need you to, at this day and age, we need some emotional intelligence as well. I absolutely love it. I want to kind of move us into mentorship because it's kind of a question that came up and I think it's really great. And they ask, kind of a multiple questions. So we'll just kind of throw them out there and then talk about it. How do you go about connecting with mentors? How do you identify if a mentor is right for you? And what role has mentorship played in your career advancement? So a lot of questions about mentorship. So maybe we just tap into the conversation a bit about, connection, identifying someone, and then how has it helped you all? Siobhan, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, so I've had mentors since early in my career and still have mentors to this day, to go back to you're never done developing, learning, and having the right support structure around you. So have a mentor, understand the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. I'm not sure if we're going to talk about sponsors and sponsorships, but there's a clear difference there between the two. And don't be so worried about the labels, whether you call somebody formally a mentor or not, or you're a mentee. Don't worry about the labels. There are so many people in your world. It can be your professional world, your personal world. We need mentors all over the place. So I think the key is have diversity in your mentors. So think about, okay, where are my strengths and where might my opportunities be? And how can I tap into my mentors perhaps to help me develop in my opportunity areas. So is there, identify people in your life where they might show up the way you want to show up, or have certain attributes that you're looking to develop in. What are you trying to get out of the relationship? And tap into your network to get connected to those people. It doesn't have to just be your inner circle. And I think this is where, diversity of these types of relationships could really help us all, because we often tend to point to or connect with somebody that might look more like us than not like us. So seek out diversity, and that's where your real large opportunities are going to be, and tap into your network to connect with those people. You don't have to use a mentor label. There are lots of people I kind of tap into in my support network that I don't call mentors, but I would consider them mentors because of just what I give to the relationship and what I'm able to take from the relationships. And so I think that it adds an unnecessarily layer of intimidation sometimes when we try to label it too much. So sometimes that's appropriate, and sometimes it doesn't have to be used.
I love that so much. Oh my gosh. Remove the idea of it having to be this thing in a box, right? It's a relationship at the grand scheme of things. But I love the diversity aspect. Connie, I want to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, and Siobhan and I have very similar views on many different things. And this is a topic that's kind of squarely within that. I kind of use this term as I think of mentorships almost as a sounding board and this continuous feedback loop. Like Siobhan, I've had formal mentors, but more broadly, I've had a lot of people who had sometimes very different skill sets than mine and were able to just be a great tool to say, here's how I'm thinking of things. Tell me how you're thinking of things. Or when I showed up in that meeting, what did you think I did great? What could I have done differently? And again, mentorship is really the ability to receive feedback that helps shape you to be the most authentic version of yourself. I think the other element that I want people to know, because I think this is really important, take what you like and discard what you don't. Just because somebody in a position of power tells you something, you don't always have to take it on board, because you have to stay true to yourself. And I think about that's like reading a book. Take what you like from the book, discard what you don't, so that you can be you. And I think it's powerful. I just echo a couple of the things that Siobhan said. Make sure that your mentor group, or your sounding board, as I like to call them, is well-rounded. My 92-year-old grandfather is probably one of my biggest mentors in my life. He's done it all, from a businessman to an entrepreneur to sitting on a bunch of boards in the arts to serving in the Air Force. He just has broad perspectives and such wisdom. And so I tap into that. And I tap into Siobhan sometimes. She and I give each other feedback very regularly, and that's powerful. I also think kind of just getting people outside your industry is incredibly important. So you, again, are bringing in that diversity of thoughts. So make it broad, really make it kind of, how are you, again, getting enough feedback, getting enough variability in terms of insights to help shape you.
I love all of this. Siobhan, you said, what do you want to get out of the relationship? I think that was huge. And then Connie, this whole aspect of just making sure, when you tap into a relationship with people, diversity and what it looks like, who it is, that's huge. And you all were talking about it, and the name of that thing, when we go out and seek people who are just like us, one, we close off our perspective. Two, affinity bias has us do that naturally. So you have to be truly intentional about seeking mentors that are different from yourself. And I love that you all just highlighted that. My DEI spidey senses are like, yes. So I'm thanking you so much for just, tapping into it naturally and just sharing. This is the way to go about doing things today. So I really, really love that. Someone asked us how the connections you've built throughout your career impacted your professional journey. And we talked a little bit about that, but they also kind of asked, do you recommend attending networking events? Is that a good thing? And they'd love to know how you or how we can generate meaningful professional connections. So I think mentorship, we kind of put that, and we know those relationships, but just in general, meaningful connections. And Siobhan, I'll throw that one your way.
Yes, yes, yes. So more relationship building, the better, especially in our industry. It's very relationship driven, but I could imagine that of many, many industries. I mean, business at the end of the day is a group of people, running an organization, driving outcomes and results. So the more you can focus on relationship building and attend those networking events, whether you like them or hate them, they're valuable. You need to do that as part of your career and growing your network and building out those relationships. And the best time to build those relationships is when you don't need something, right? The worst time is when you need to pick up the phone and call for a favor, right? You want to have that really good foundation of those relationships so you can phone a friend sometimes when we all are in those situations when we need to do that. So yes, you need to do that. And look, I wasn't always a believer. In high school, I remember I was trying to find my very first job, and my dad was like, well, I'll connect you with some people in my network. And I was like, oh no, Dad, I'm going to do this on my own. I don't need your network. I'll show you. And sure enough, like weeks later, jobless, I come to him saying, oh, well, maybe I can talk to some of your people in your network. They might be able to help me. So I was hard-headed and tried to do it all myself, but definitely learned at a young age the power of a network. And it's really again, go into it not having, the expectation that someone's going to land you a job, but a connection can connect you to the right people and go down the line. And it might be of value, it might not, but you're still going to have that relationship and you're still going to build that muscle around, growing and curating your network. So I definitely recommend this. And also if you're in an organization where it's tough to connect to maybe a diverse group, again, we're, tend to be in a more male dominated industry, there are networks that are specific. I'm part of Global Gaming Women as an example. And it was one of the best things I did for myself was to purposely and intentionally connect with a broader women's group in my industry. And I just felt it was so fulfilling. And I really kind of gained this additional support network where I could understand people are having the same experiences of me and we could share about those experiences. So again, it doesn't have to be just within your organization or just within your industry. There are so many networks and groups and organizations out there that if you seek out with intention the kind of support that you need, they're there. You just have to tap into them.
Go ahead, Connie. Any thoughts on networking and networking events, et cetera?
Yeah, I agree. I think that networking is like my least favorite thing, to be open. I'm busy. I got a million things to do, lots of priorities. What I will say though, is when I do go to one, I always find something that was really fulfilling, from whether that's a new idea or somebody's perspective, or just kind of connecting, as Siobhan said, with many folks that are going through some of the same opportunities, in this phase in your life. And so I do think it's important. What I do know to hold true is that relationships really are the fundamental piece, I think, of so many various elements that ultimately really play into a successful career. My background is I was in I think it was Gaming 101, and my professor was also the head of internal audit at the company that was MGM Mirage before. And he said, Connie, I've got a spot open, come work for me. And it was that moment then that led to my first job, that led to a connection at Deloitte. My clients at Deloitte became my next employer. I had a number of opportunities there. Then I got connected through my uncle with somebody at Cargill, which led to that role. And then ultimately it was my relationships at one of my former employers that landed me here today. So None of it was intentional. It was all really serendipitous, with the exception that along the way, I just built really great relationships. And it is such a catalyst, I think, for growth in so many ways. A wise person once told me, you should always be on the mind of 3 individuals. And if you can do that, then you know when they're thinking about opportunities, then you'll come to mind and they can put you forward. And then those folks get to know you. And just very quickly, if you do the math, it really does become a multiplier for you. So I'd encourage you just to, as Siobhan said, keep those relationships alive. It takes time and energy. It can also be just incredibly rewarding.
Absolutely. The power of 3. Right. I mean, it's beautiful.
Right.
Absolutely. This is great. And I love that conversation about networking. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I love to shake a hand, meet a friend, and meet somebody. I think it's just so fulfilling, especially in today's society. We had this global pandemic. We were all virtual and doing this thing. And while that's great, I need to go out there and hello, here I am. So I love the perspectives. I want to make sure I get this one question in before we get to time. And it's about work-life balance. So I read your bios, everyone heard your bios. You all have climbed the corporate ladder. You are sitting in these beautiful positions. How do you balance life, living, being a human being, and work? And so Siobhan, we'll start with you. Work-life balance. What's your motto? What's your role? What's your thing? What do you do? How do you do it?
Yeah, I think let's not have any illusions. Like, I'm still figuring it out. So none of us have the answer, and none of us have it all figured out all the time. That's for sure. I've tried the word balance. I've tried integration. Then it gets kind of wonky with integration, and I'm trying to balance again. It's because I think, so personally, I'm married, have 3 kids, twins that are 11, and a third that's 7. So when they were babies, it was one kind of balance. And then, I got opportunities in my career and they're a little older. It's a different kind of balance. And I would say it's an ongoing juggle, right? Because my kids are in different stages of their lives. I'm in different stages of my career. My husband and I are in different stages of our marriage. He also manages a career. So what I have implemented is just kind of a check-in with myself to say, am I spending my time and energy on the right things, on the right priorities, on the right people? Like, because of the rate of change that my life or career or, things that Light and Wonder are moving in, I have to just kind of put check-ins in place and then rebalance if I need to. And I'll get sucked into work sometimes too much, and I'll be like, ooh, I feel myself getting sucked in. Let me recalibrate here. So it's just kind of an ongoing check-in for me. But again, having the awareness around, look, I do want it all. And I know I can't have it all 150% on both sides, but I try really hard to be a great mom, to be present for my kids, to be a great wife, to be a great sister and daughter in my family, to be a great friend. And oh, by the way, have the career that I find to be fulfilling. But that requires me checking in with myself and checking in with those people in my life to make sure that I am trying to balance it all and juggle it all. So I would say it's an ongoing effort. It's certainly a muscle I've had to build. I think being aware of your boundaries, identifying boundaries, and then reinforcing those boundaries, which can be shifting also, and a continual effort also, is really important. It's something I really struggled with early in my career, especially as I moved life stages from non-mom to mom. And I've learned to build that skill over time. Still not awesome at it, but I'm better than I was. So progress, not perfection, is my motto. And sometimes just good enough is okay is another motto I use. So those are things that I struggle with and ways I try to manage it as best as possible.
I sure appreciate your honesty and vulnerability. Thank you. Progress is not perfection, and just good enough is okay. Those are going down. Connie, what you got for us? Work-life balance.
Yeah, I'm, there's a lot in there that's, I can really relate to what Siobhan said. I think it ties back into this authentic self and really understanding, to your point, what is that wholeness bucket that makes you, and what are those categories that you know you need to find that balance in order to be the best version of you.
Yeah.
I think early in my career, I'll be open, I probably put too much into the career bucket, and there was probably some real pressures that got created in some of those other categories that I know I need for me to be whole. And so, to Siobhan's point, it's that check-in. I'm a paper person. I know the world wants me to move digital, but I still carry this big journal around, and every Friday, I'll take a few moments and maybe even on a Saturday morning and just say, what was the week that was? And again, what are my reflections? And then on a monthly basis, it was, okay, how am I showing up as a mom, as a wife, as a friend, as a sister, all of those hats that we wear. And I think it's important to communicate with yourself, and I think it's important to communicate with others. I live in a very, as I mentioned, deadline-driven world. So before we release our earnings, which we're about to go into, I go dark for 2 weeks. But people know that. My husband knows that. My children know that I work 14 hours a day, and that's the 2 weeks. And then I'm going to try and get a couple days off the back of that once I kind of go through that delivery. And so I think it's being open and honest with yourself, because I think folks that try and do everything at the same time, you're setting yourself up for failure. I can promise you. You have to be really transparent with yourself and accepting of that. The other thing I would say is time management. Siobhan's used the word deliberate a few times, one of my favorite words. You get what you ultimately, in my mind, put your mind to, and then follow up with it. My life is completely scheduled 3 months ahead of time. Every single hour of the day, even on Saturdays and Sundays, I know exactly what I'm doing. And I do it deliberately, because that way I can say, okay, when you look at my calendar, it's not only just board meetings and QBRs and all the rest. It's okay. Here's the violin recital. Here's the birthday party we need to go on. And I used to joke, I remember early in my career, there was an audit partner, and she said, yeah, my assistant helps coordinate my husband and I when we're going to be able to go out to dinner. I was like, that'll never be me. I'll never be that wife. Well, guess who's that wife? I am. Like, if it's not in that calendar, it's not going to happen. So just be really deliberate about your time and make no apologies about it. And here's the other thing, folks, hopefully most of us get to live till we're 80 years old. You don't have to do it all today. You will have different phases in your life to accomplish many things. So one day I want to be a professor. I hope I get to achieve that. And that's okay. Like, we are so dynamic. I'm not just Connie, the CFO. Sometimes I'm Connie, the CFO. I am Connie that loves to go for nature walks and learn about birds and loves to cook. So just give yourself grace. Give yourself this acceptance. Like, life is a beautiful journey. Don't put so much pressure on yourself.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Thank you both so much. Look, before we wrap up, I want to jump to this last part. We got like 2 minutes, and I want to make sure we tell everybody something that you all shared with us, and just to like what it's like to work at Light and Wonder, which if anything, like talking to you all today, wow. So we had the opportunity to meet with you all and dive just a little bit deeper. And kind of we asked if you could describe Light and Wonder's culture in one word. You said progressive, and I thought that was really great. And Siobhan, you mentioned that the favorite part about working at Light and Wonder was the people. And I think that's amazing too. One word, we got 1 minute. When it comes to interviewing advice, what's your top tip for someone who's interviewing? We see rehearse the elevator pitch, make sure it's a good fit. One word, if you had to drop the nugget, what would you say? Siobhan, will go to you, and then Connie will end it right there with you. Siobhan?
Yeah, I think inquisitive, kind of goes to my answer on the page here, but, be inquisitive, be curious. You're going to spend a lot of time at this organization and with the people that you're working with. And in certain stages of life, you spend more time with your work colleagues than anyone else in your life. That's just how it is. So be inquisitive, make sure you're understanding the role and the organization and their culture, and try to talk to, if they'll allow it, as many people throughout that interview process, especially as you're progressing down that track, just so that you can build context and make sure that you're making the right decision for you. At the end of the day, it's not just a job, it is a large part of your life. So you want to make sure you're inquisitive. And I love candidates that are inquisitive and demonstrate curiosity and ask awesome questions. Like that is a real flag for me on a really strong candidate, because they're doing their homework or have done their homework, and they're interviewing me as much as I'm interviewing them. So that would be my bit of advice.
I love it. Thank you, Siobhan. Connie, take us on.
Yeah,
home.
just quickly, be authentic. To Siobhan's point, you know, you've got the conversation open and highlighting what it is, again, that makes you great. Be prepared, go there, and let them know, just not here's who I am in a business sense, but here's some of the, again, the broader things that make me whole, because it is a two-way street. You know, it's like a marriage in some way. So go deep. Yeah.
Absolutely. I absolutely love it. Listen, Connie and Siobhan, thank you so much for sharing your time and knowledge with the community. And thank you, Light and Wonder, for making this event possible. And to our community members, thank you for joining us once again. And make sure to follow Light and Wonder on Power to Fly and stay up to date on their open roles, benefits, and more fun events just like this one. We appreciate you all. Take your right hand, put it with your left hand, show yourself some love. We appreciate you and sending blessings to all of you on your journey. Namaste.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.